Greetings, fellow metrologists. Welcome to another edition of ChatNAPT with AI Chatterbox Chuck and Howie, a podcast dedicated towards metrology. My name is Chuck Ellis, and my co-host for the podcast is Howard. So what's going on with you today? Anything exciting?
Here for the podcast. That's exciting.
Well, let's get right into our guest. So let's talk about Ken. Ken Racen is the founder and the CEO for an organization called Metrology Institute. It's a nonprofit 501c3 organization dedicated to advancing measurement science through education, certification, and workforce development. With over 40 years experience in metrology, quality systems, and laboratory leadership, Ken has helped shape the future of precision measurements across critical industries. He holds an MBA in business and in IT. He has certification for an ASQ quality auditor. He's a calibration technician, CTS holder, and he is a Lean Six Sigma specialist.
Perfect timing.
Perfect timing.
There's the man of the hour.
Morning, gentlemen.
And by hour, I mean at least 60 minutes. Ken, welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Hey, thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
I was trying to think back of when you and I first met. I'm thinking it was around 2012 or 2013, maybe. You may have been still or just wrapping up with Southern California Edison. I had met Tim Mason and I was looking at the auctions of the equipment and we ended up buying quite a bit of that. And I think that's maybe when we first met, but then I remember seeing you at Alcon after that. Was it Rafael Munoz that was there?
Yeah, Rafael, yeah, good friend of mine.
Yeah.
He's since retired, moved to Texas.
Yes. So yeah, we go back at least 14, 15 years.
Yeah.
Ken, I'll bet you don't remember when we first met.
Not specifically, but it's been a few years.
It's been almost 25 years plus.
Wow.
Your old boss at Southern California, we did one of our first regional ILCs at Edison. And wow. I remember meeting you, going down the hall. You were busy, and I got introduced to you like in 13 seconds. Was the introduction between you and I. It goes back to where Edison sponsored, regional ILC 25 years ago.
Yeah, they did a lot of sponsorships. It was a great organization and really contributed to the metrology industry.
They really did, and I, they were part, of why NAP was able to get off the ground, because they stood up, and I love your boss, and he was a real, person that really wanted to see NAPT succeed. So part of the growth of NAPT goes to people like your old boss at Edison.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I was ashamed to see that lab close.
Oh, yeah. Everyone was. That was a world-class metrology organization.
It really was.
It had some very, very talented people there also.
You bet.
Yeah. Well, we're here today to talk about your latest endeavor, which I kind of hinted to in the introduction, Ken, is a huge undertaking. And so we're talking basically about the Metrology Institute. So rather than me talk about it, why don't you share with us exactly what it is, maybe what you're trying to accomplish with it, and how we can, not only can, Howard and I help you, but how the metrology community can help you with your endeavors as well.
Sure. Well, as we just spoke, we've all been in the metrology industry for a very long time. I go back to the early 80s.
Me too.
When actually, growing up, my grandfather had started a calibration lab in St. Louis called the Industrial Service Laboratories, or ISL for short. And then over a period of time, that ended up becoming Transcat St. Louis about 30 plus years ago. But I pretty much grew up in the metrology industry. I've been in it for probably 46 years now. And over time, I keep seeing the same thing. Metrology industry has depended upon the military for its calibration technicians, specifically, female and TMDE technicians. But those individuals are retiring. And there's a big gap with the military. It's coming out of the military and what is available, what the needs are. So I saw this coming some years ago, like many of us. About 2 years ago, I said, how can I contribute back to the metrology industry? And training education was a big big part of it. But what I didn't want to do was reproduce or reinvent the wheel of other professionals that are out there providing training. So I wanted the Metrology Institute to be kind of a hub where we can all, collaborate and partner and offer the metrology community a resource for all different types of training and courses. Because I saw it as more kind of a sporadic sprinkling of training. And there's some very good organizations and individuals providing that training today. But it seems to be segmented. And so Metrology Institute formed as a nonprofit organization. So the intention is really not to profit, it's to contribute back to the metrology industry. I looked at the training that is available. There's a lot of good training courses out there, but that's what they are. They're training courses. They aren't, accredited training. They aren't college credit.
Yeah, not a matriculating program, right?
Right. The other part was to recognize calibration as a professional trade. And in order to do that, you need training education from an accredited institution, such as trade schools. The deeper I got into it, I found that it's very difficult for calibration labs to compete wage-wise against other professional trades. The only way to do that is to have calibration programs to educate people in calibration and metrology as a professional trade with a 2-year degree. And that kind of sets the foundation to start. And then the additional training as we go through our careers on top of that. So that's kind of Metrology Institute in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't start it to create or compete against other organizations or individuals that are already offering training, but to have a centralized resource for individuals looking for metrology training, and also try to promote community colleges or trade schools to offer calibration programs.
How does what you're doing align with the calibration certification technician program? Because, what I know now from, inside part of the ASQ people is that they're really disillusioned somewhat with the amount of people that participate in that test that they take. They had this big vision that that was going to become a bigger than life certification program as well. And that kind of, it's not getting the attendees that they want. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We can discuss that during the show if you want. But I'm curious, have you reached out to like the ASQ people to synchronize what you're doing with that program? And like you said, you've reached out to technical colleges already. Where are you at in getting this accredited training, up and running?
So the ASQ Certified Calibration Technician program is an excellent certification, excellent program. And I can look at it as a foundational certification for calibration technicians today. And that's where it should all start.
Yeah, but they actually take the test after they've been trained. You can't take that test until you're a trained technician.
Yeah, experience.
Well, yeah, until you have some level of training and some expertise. I think there's some prerequisites for that. Typically, it's hands-off training. It's foundational knowledge for a calibration tech. And I recommend all the technicians that I work with take that program. But to your point, I haven't reached out to ASQ yet to partner with them. And the intent of the Metrology Institute is not to replace it, it's to promote those programs.
Mm-hmm.
I want to promote everybody's training program because I think it all benefits the metrology industry. So think of it this way: if there was a centralized organization that people would go to and find all things training and education for metrology, that's what I want Metrology Institute to be, centralized for that. In fact, there's links on the website to the ASQ CCT training promoting that.
You had shared with us the technology program that you're recommending, trying to build. Do you mind if I share that with the audience?
Sure.
So here we're looking at the package that you sent to us, 20 pages, right? So there's a lot of detail in here. I'm not going to read it all. But what I do want to do is share the curriculum that you're looking at for this program. And we're talking about, the foundations of metrology and safety, the 17 credit hours for that semester. Second semester would be calibration methods and systems, another 19. That's a pretty heavy load. and then a summer internship, which I think is absolutely critical for this program to convert that theoretical knowledge to hands-on applications. Semester 3, advanced calibration techniques, 16 credit hours, and then semester 4, industry integration and capstone. This is really a good part in here where they get to the end result, the capstone projects, another 17 credit hours. Total is 72 credit hours, pretty thorough. And so you've had discussions with institutes on this. How's that going?
I'm primarily focused on Missouri State Tech, which is one of the U.S. largest technical schools.
Mm-hmm.
And I've spoken to the president of the school, Dr. Sean Strong. There is some interest there, but there's also some hesitation. So we're going to continue our talks into how we can make this a reality.
Right.
Currently, Missouri State Tech offers 34 different technical programs geared towards skilled trades. Just about anything any skilled trade that you can think of, they offer those programs. And so calibration really fits into what they're doing. You know,
Right.
They have electronics, medical, machining. They all use test equipment. And so there is some level of interest there.
And that's really what you're promoting in this document, is that metrology feeds all of these other industries. And it's very critical
Right.
to it. So I'm sure from that perspective, Dr. Strong and the college are interested in this program, but they're a business too, and they have to make this feasible to work, right, and be profitable for them. So whatever
Exactly.
we can do to help with that, let me know, because I'm here locally as well in Kansas City area. And if there's anything I can do to help with that, let me know.
I appreciate that.
Good effort, though. Very strong effort. That's more detail than I've seen in most efforts towards promoting a metrology program.
You know, some of the headwinds that I've encountered, and I think I entered this kind of naively that, we can just create an accredited program and go down that path. Well, that's a long path. It's typically takes 4 to 7 years to
Right.
become an accredited school.
Right. Yes.
So leveraging existing colleges, trade schools is the best route that I can think of.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, a shortcut and not have to do all that qualification.
Right. As well as leaning on our metrology community, people that are already doing training. We have experts in the field that already offer excellent training.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've worked for Metrology for a while in the early 90s, and they have an excellent training program on dimensional metrology. Jim Salisbury heads that up, and they're expanding the dimensional metrology training. So I'd love to work closely with them to promote their training and come up with some dimensional metrology curriculum for a 2-year program.
Right.
For dimensional, or
There's also for dimensional. I'm specifically talking dimensional, but there's other disciplines that other organizations or individuals are promoting and teaching today. There's sign calibration. They offer some great courses in metrology and quality. There's A2LA workplace training. There's like Morehouse offers some on force. So there's a lot of training resources available in the metrology community that I'd love to work closer with and promote their training.
is your endeavors to bring people into the field? Because these training programs that we talked about, they're all good, and you want to kind of coordinate that and get them all under one roof. But these are for technicians that are currently, most of them already in the industry. They're already employed by somebody, and that training would be something that the employer would more than likely pay for, if you will. But in your institute would be the technical college. They would go to that program and then get into our industry. Is that correct?
And yes, but the Metrology Institute, I don't see it becoming an actual institute as far as providing that educational program, because it just takes too long.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of funding. It takes 4 to 7 years to become accredited as a college institution. So I want to work on leveraging existing colleges
Mhm.
and existing training and having those experts in the industry help in that endeavor. In other words, help create curriculum, help create the training materials for these colleges, and maybe even become substitute instructors and
Oh, sure.
so or sponsors of certain classes.
Yeah. So Metrology Institute would draw the resources together to create these opportunities through colleges, universities, trade schools, and companies like Sign Calibration or A2LA Workplace Training,
Mm-hmm.
ASQ, CCT. Just pull those resources together to make that possible, which is not today. And what we're missing today is that introductory, like you said, Chuck, that introductory program to get a 2-year degree. So you can take somebody who has no experience whatsoever and get them through that program and into the workforce. And then other advanced training could be specifically from these A2A workplace training or sign calibration or others, where you're focusing on a specific discipline or subdiscipline.
Correct.
Yeah.
When you have young people who want to pursue a skilled trade and they approach these trade schools or colleges, calibration is not on the menu. They don't.
Right.
It's not offered. So we're losing a huge opportunity to introduce young people to calibration.
Yeah. The effort of the committee that we've had at NCSL that got the Department of Labor to introduce calibration technologist and technician titles
Mhm.
is a first step. Now, so that gets it into the handbook that college and high school advisors can use to help point students in the right direction. But it's 2 titles in a sea of hundreds or thousands of jobs. And for
Exactly.
them to pick that out specifically to make people aware, it's not likely to happen. So it's a first step. It's a small step. Took a lot to get it there, 18, 20 years, but there needs to be more. And I see this Metrology Institute as being that mechanism to take it that next level.
And we want to be a catalyst, or a springboard where we can help launch metrology education to the next level by leveraging what is existing out there, by leveraging organizations that currently offer training courses and just bringing it together under, kind of one umbrella, to collaborate with everybody, to partner.
Right.
And
A single go-to source.
exactly,
Right.
go here and then these are all the resources available from different organizations.
Right.
And promote those organizations. You mentioned the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. I think it was in 2018 when you guys first were able to
Yeah.
get.
Yeah. So the Occupational Classification Committee tried to get that into the next entry because it's only once every, I think, 8 or 10 years that handbook has changed from Department of Labor. And they rejected it the first time, and then Chris Grashnan, who was the chair of the committee, kept pushing it, and he got it into the next one. So it took about 18 years to get that
Wow.
implemented, and it's an uphill battle. But again, all of that work to get those, because there was nothing prior to that for calibration as far as job classifications go in Department of Labor. And that's usually where guidance counselors point students to from jobs that are available. And they look at the statistics and say, what's the rising statistic for the next wave of occupations that are needed? Here's where you should be focusing your efforts in college or trade school. And so again, it's lost in a sea of different jobs and trades. And so it doesn't get the attention it needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so being in the metrology industry for so long, you look around and look at all the different trades that require education, require some type of certification and even licensing.
Mm-hmm.
And but calibration technician is not there. Think about the importance of what the metrology industry does for every industry across the board, and there's no specific requirements or licensing required to be a calibration tech. Yet the person who cuts your hair has to be a licensed beautician.
Right. Yeah, certainly the impact of the calibration process and all the different ways it can go wrong and the ways it can go right. It takes control, right? It requires
Yeah.
controlled processes, documentation, training, standards, environment. And without those controls, you can have disastrous results. Now, I don't want to raise the alarm because a lot of people will say, and rightfully so, there are checks and balances in a manufacturing process, or there should be, to catch those things before they become a problem. And that's true, but it doesn't always catch everything. There's a factor of cost, safety for the products and the processing of components of the product that are being manufactured that can have an effect negatively on the production company, right? The manufacturing company. So there's factors that are involved that make that important to do. It's not just make sure the equipment is aligned and measurements are correct. It's the result of the cost and safety that can come from that if it's not controlled.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a big part of metrology is trust. And when the technician asked me, so why do we calibrate? What's the whole purpose of calibration?
Hmm.
I said, think of yourself as a detective. You're to detect out of tolerances, conditions, and report those to the end user of that equipment. So they can in turn evaluate the impact that may have had on their processes and their manufacturing. So you're looking for that needle in the haystack of
Yes.
an out of tolerance condition to report that back. So that's in my opinion, the real purpose of calibration is you're not only ensuring that it's in tolerance, but more importantly, you're trying to find what could be wrong or out of tolerance for that equipment.
So you mentioned needle in the haystack, and that's what it should be when you're running an optimal calibration program or measurement assurance program. If you're not running it optimally, you don't have the right intervals, they're too long, things are going to be failing, they're mishandled, misused, not stored properly. A lot of reasons why equipment can give you bad measurements without you knowing it. And so you're going to have more than a needle in a haystack if that cal program is not in control, and you'll be finding more out of tolerances. But the job is to manage the whole program. And that's really what the metrology perspective is, as opposed to calibration. Calibration is the act of the calibration event, comparing an instrument to a standard. Metrology is the overall overarching look at the measurement assurance program to ensure that it's not impacting product. And there's so many ways that can happen. And a lot of our papers that we write in the metrology industry are focused on that.
Yeah. I want to add something, Ken. I want to build on something you said that has always been a pet peeve of mine for a long time. And I've used this example, in some presentations that, for example, like the forensic, analysis, people that investigate crimes, they do this stuff that's life and death decisions based on their analysis. And they use equipment that's supposed to be, calibrated. And like you said, Ken, so elegantly, there's nothing that says they even have to use an accredited calibration on their equipment. So how are we verifying that these measurements that are being taken are accurate? They're correct. When you have forensic people that are, like you said, they're licensed and they have to do all kinds of training and ongoing training throughout the year to keep their license, but the equipment they're using is not, and there's no validation to the equipment.
You know what the irony is of that? Forensics and medical technology for like lab results and things like that all come with a measurement and a margin of error, which is, let me translate that, that's uncertainty in the measurement. Yet they're not using accredited or qualified equipment every time. How are they getting that measurement of error without that piece of it?
Well, I'm not saying they're not using the right equipment. I'm saying they haven't proven that the measurement is accurate under quality standards.
Sure. Yeah. Interesting dilemma.
Now, going back, years when I started metrology, we worked under Mill Standard 45662A, and that was basically a self-regulated industry. We had, our customers would come and do audits, quality audits, on a regular basis, probably 2 or 3 a month. And along came NCZ 540, and then ISO 17025. All of those are voluntary standards. And, to be a calibration lab, you don't have to comply with any of those standards. They're all voluntary.
Well, it's interesting you talk about that because this week I attended a presentation on ISO 10012 for manufacturing. And that has changed from a type B guidance document to now a type A requirements document, the 2026 release of that. And there's now implementations of shall instead of should or could or must, right? Or might. 205 instances of shall in this new document with appendices that talk about measurement uncertainty and how to calculate that and how to get into those details. And the requirements are that you have to control the variables in the measurements in your measurement assurance program. And so that's now driving all these changes that we've seen in the traceability chain are now driving down to manufacturing, which is where it should end up, because that's what we're here for. Metrology is under the Department of Commerce. NIST is under the Department of Commerce because we're trying to make sure that trade occurs fairly and safely. And so this document, I think, is a big step in the right direction. I know it's going to be a lot of cost for companies. It's going to take years to implement, but it is now culminating all of these changes to focus on controlling the measurements better than ever before. And with advancements in technology, you have to do that.
Yeah, that in combination with software to automate a lot of these calculations for measurement uncertainty, to eliminate human error.
All right. So my next question for you, Ken, is about artificial intelligence. And how do you see that? Subject. How do you see that coming into play in metrology across the board? Just general thoughts that you might have on that. And do you have any plans to introduce that at all with the Metrology Institute?
A good question. I think artificial intelligence, AI, is going to impact metrology in a big way. And I have some thoughts and ideas on how that will happen or how they occur. And the other part of your question was, does Metrology Institute have any plans to leverage AI for metrology? Yes. I'm actually kind of trying to teach myself how to create a AI agent focused on metrology. I'm planning to call it a metrology tutor, so that if somebody who is in metrology has some metrology related questions or wants to do some analysis, can use that AI agent that's specifically trained in metrology. There's a process, I'm still learning this myself. It's called the RAG, where you actually upload the documents you wanted to reference documents. Instead of going out to the world and trying to come up with its own answers, you're just telling it, calculate measurements uncertainty based upon the gun. Here's the gun. And when I get to that point, I plan on reaching out to NIST to see what NIST can contribute to that library, a reference library of documents.
Yeah, so that would control the limits of the AI agent. Right. Instead of just using anything and everything and garbage included, right? So you're controlling that to known references that are valid.
Yeah, I'd love to partner with somebody who actually has created AI agents that knows a lot more than I do. I've done some software development in my prior years, but a little rusty, and this is a whole new thing.
Okay, listening audience, that's an open invitation to contact Ken. Fantastic.
I think it's going to make a big impact on metrology, as far as verifying procedures, actually writing procedures, verifying test results. I think it could be a big impact.
Yeah.
Well, I have something, I don't know, off track a little bit here, Ken. Maybe you've already thought of this, maybe you haven't, but I remember years ago that I was involved in a project with a technical college up in Minnesota, where they approached, us. At the time, I was really involved with NCSLI. They approached us to help them not train, but to put in place a program where they would require 1 semester of basic calibrations. So all their technical programs were required to do this program. And I worked with this college for about 3 years, where we taught an instructor how to teach calibration basics. Is that something that you want to do as well? Because I think that would go a long way as well with your endeavors in the technical colleges, to have a number of technical colleges offer some sort of basic calibration program that all the disciplines, whether you're a welder, you still need to know what, in inches, all these kind of things. So
Chuck,
there's a lot of,
was that Mr. O'Neill?
no,
I'm
no,
thinking of someone else. Okay.
no. O'Neill was with the Ridgewater College, which used to have a online program, which is now
Yeah,
defunct. No, this is a different community college up there.
got it.
But they,
I
the
think
last I heard, they still run this program where they require, all the people in these in these trade programs to take one semester of basic calibration.
And that's another great approach instead of having so all of these, these ideas and different ways to approach metrology or calibration education is great. It doesn't have to be a full 2-year metrology program. It can be augmented. If you're taking going to trade school to learn electronics, you could have a semester of electrical, electronic calibration,
Sure.
if you're taking a machining, you have a semester of dimensional metrology. And in one of my recent visits to the Missouri Tech, I was working with the dean that oversaw the machining program, and so we went. He showed me all their big beautiful machines that they had. Mostly of them were all donated by Haas, and the students were huddled around this huge surface plate, and they had their capstone projects out. And their capstone projects was building this small little, I believe it was some type of steam engine, some type of piston cylinder type engine, and they were talking about the problems that they had. And so I asked them, so what type of problems did you have in building this and making it work? And one of the students said, well, I found that there was the cylinder was not quite round. It had kind of a lobe in it. And I said, well, how did you measure that? Oh, I used a bore gauge. And so I said, what you're talking about? Well, first I asked him, have you ever heard of metrology? No, I haven't heard of it. What's metrology? So after querying them, I said, what you're doing is metrology. And they didn't realize. So
Right.
that was an introduction to this group of students to taking machining to metrology. They were using hand tools to measure their products, but they don't put two and two together.
We've sponsored co-ops and internships through Transcat. Pretty successful. The value there, I've talked about this before, but the value there is that you're taking typically engineering students who don't have much in their curriculum for metrology, traceability. They might have an instrumentation class, but that's about it, if they have that at all. And so getting their hands on calibration process, the equipment, understanding the equipment in greater detail than they had before, and understanding now the traceability component. So when they get out into becoming an engineer and they're required to control manufacturing processes, order test equipment and all of that, they have a better idea of what they're up against.
Yeah.
So that's been successful. Surprisingly, some of those engineering students have taken jobs with us. And you would think that they'd go off into engineering at some point, and they may. But even if they work with us for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, they get an even deeper knowledge of calibration and metrology and the requirements and traceability to product, which makes them better, I think, engineers from a different perspective. But if they stay with us or our competitors, either one, then we get a lot of value from that education that they've received. However, it's still kind of really not hitting the nail on the head. And I think a 2-year program focused on metrology, focused on calibration, would be more appropriate for people who want to stay in calibration. Now, that's not to say engineers, physicists, chemists wouldn't be welcome in metrology. They absolutely are, because we need metrologists in the design and setup of calibration processes. But for the technician levels in all of these calibration labs, internal, external, I think the 2-year program is very critical. I think that's going to be a very important piece of it. I think it's a missing piece today.
Into what Chuck, what you were saying earlier regarding augmenting existing programs with a semester of calibration is a great way of doing it also. There's, I don't have all the answers, and we need to lean on industry experts like yourself and other people to come up with more inventive ways to provide the education that our young people need in calibration and metrology. And I kind of separate the two. I look at calibration technician, that skill, I looked at it as a skilled trade
Sure.
versus a metrology engineer who actually took a 4-year program in engineering and not 100% maybe in metrology, but at least augmented their education with some metrology courses, whether they're a mechanical engineer or electrical engineer, what have you. But I think as an industry, we're losing out if we don't start treating calibration techs as a skilled trade. And once we do that, it will elevate the entire industry. It will elevate it to a more professional level. Where like a commercial calibration lab needs to hire a technician. You look at the ads and what qualifications they're looking for, and you'll see, associate's degree or preferred PML technician, preferred PML experience or TMDE experience. But nowhere do you see in there looking for a calibration technician with a associate's degree in calibration or metrology.
Right. And I think part of that curriculum that you've built, there's some critical steps there or courses that people I think often overlook. And you and I and Chuck see this from experience and watching new technicians come in. But English composition, right? Communications, college algebra, basic physics, maybe even chemistry. Those are things that most technicians that go through these other programs don't get. They get the specialized training in a discipline or generally in metrology. They're missing those components that are critical for them to communicate well internally with their peers, with their management, and externally with clients. So I think all of those are very important components of the matriculating program.
Well, where do you see the program heading, Ken? What can we do, Howard and I, and the metrology community, to help you fulfill this endeavors?
I think, on my website, metrologyinstitute.org, there's areas where you can sign up as a partner and just kind of partner with the Metrology Institute. For partners, we help promote your organization, any training classes that you offer, to really help Metrology Institute be a centralized hub for the Metrology Institute, for the metrology community regarding training and course opportunities. The other thing is I'm working on a presentation to speak to companies that do offer those types of courses. I mentioned Meditoyo earlier. They have some great courses in dimensional metrology. And how can we work with them as far as creating curriculums designed for, community colleges or trade schools in dimensional metrology? They offer a lot in calibration in general, how to calibrate, micrometers, calipers, all the different, tools. How can we boil it down into, a real curriculum focused on dimensional metrology? And the same thing goes with like Fluke and, DC low frequency, temperature, pressure, and other OEMs that offer, their metrology products and education. I want to partner with all of those individuals or organizations that offer that type of training. Earlier you mentioned sign calibration and A2LA workplace training. All of these people offer great training courses. How can we take those and have metrologists to not only promote that, but how can we design those to fit into a 2-year curriculum? There's also quality, the 17025 quality aspect of it too. And there's a training organization that specializes in measurement uncertainty, how to do that. Those are all important areas that, I think it starts with collaboration and partnership.
Ken, you're not going to be able to retire because what you are doing is a big project. Like you said earlier in the program, you're talking 7 to 10 years to have this come to any, fruition. So don't plan on retiring, my friend.
Who's talking about retiring?
He never mentioned that.
Well, I want to retire.
There's retiring and there's retiring. Retiring from one part of your life and continuing into another
Right.
path is different. And that's basically my plan is to support the metrology community as long as I can, and as long as it has purpose, as long as it's moving forward.
Well, we're going to support you. I know that from that, from the business side, we're going to support you. And obviously, we're going to get the word out there as well, because I think that's something else we can help you with, is get the word out there, what you're trying to accomplish, and get these other individuals to get on board with you and work directly with you to help you accomplish your mission.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I mean, it's going to take a community, it's going to take everybody to, to get this moving. And, the metrology community has some great organizations, the Measurement Science Conference, the NCSLI, you mentioned ASQ. These are all great organizations that have done a really fantastic service for the industry. And Metrology Institute is not, it's there to promote those, continue on with those organizations. Like I said, I see it as more of a hub to try to bring all of these organizations and individuals together to promote one thing, and that's metrology education as a central source.
Well, we're not there yet, but we're starting to run out of time. And so what we want to try and focus a little bit is we want to get a little bit personal with you, Ken. What got you involved with metrology?
Well, I mentioned earlier, I grew up in metrology. My grandfather started industrial service laboratories in St. Louis in 1946. So basically third generation. I exited out of that organization, some time ago, and now that organization is Transcat St. Louis.
So your grandpa or your father, they're the ones that taught you how to make measurements?
They were very influential in that. In my early years, I hung out at the laboratory and learned a lot from the calibration technicians we had at the time. And at that time, it was a lot of analog, test equipment, a lot of Weston, Leeds, Northrop. And, I took over the service aspect of the business. I had a brother who took over the sales aspect of the business. And so I really focused on service. I've always been a hands-on type person, been a builder of things. Built my first boat when I was in 8th grade and my second boat when I was in 9th grade. So always been, a hands-on builder. So I like building things and creating things. I got involved in software development back in the early 90s. And basically out of, having your own business, you have to wear a lot of hats. So I was involved in, trying to build software systems for the organizations. I was heavily involved in quality, sales and marketing, everything involved in a small business. From there, I moved to California, worked for Metrology as a district manager, covered Southern California, Arizona, border towns in Mexico. That was a very good experience. Learned a lot about metrology because our lab was focused mostly on electrical, temperature, pressure, and a little bit of dimensional metrology. So there I went to Metrology and their metrology group as part of the Mudcats team. Learned a lot at Edison, and the people in the metrology as well as the Mudcats team. Very, very smart people. I like to think that some of it rubbed off, but we'll see. And then I worked for Alcon, eye surgery organization. So in all of my history, it's all been regulated industry. A lot in St. Louis was aerospace. Back then it was McDonnell Douglas, and also nuclear. We did a lot of calibration for the nuclear power plants, the Callaway nuclear power plant when it was being built. Also the Illinois nuclear power plant and Wolf Creek power plant. So we did a lot of nuclear work. And as such, we had to maintain a very tight quality system to qualify for that work. At Edison, they were a nuclear utility, so everything we did at Edison was nuclear, supporting the San Onofre nuclear power plant. And with Alcon, it was FDA, so a lot of medical device, pharma, quality regulations. And so all along the way, I learned a lot about, not only deepening my perspective and my skills as far as in metrology, but also quality as well. And looking at it as a holistic, approach to ensuring products and people safety, public safety is intact.
Where have you traveled that you think you would want to go back to, or we should go to visit anywhere in the world?
Well, my wife and I really enjoy traveling to Europe. We've taken several trips to Europe. We recently went to Germany, and we're in Zurich. Took a tour of the Lindt chocolate factory. Another part of my path was back in the early 2000s. My wife started a chocolate company. It's called Downey's Chocolates, and so I helped. I kind of stepped out of metrology for a couple of years to get that off the ground, and so I went from kind of a metrologist to official taste tester. So that was a lot of fun, a lot of change.
From a metrologist to a choctologist?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. So my life has evolved around metrology, and also a big part of it is chocolate. We still do chocolates for friends and families during the holidays.
That's
Here
exciting.
at home.
Who doesn't love
Yeah,
chocolate?
yeah. Each home we've had, I've had to build out a chocolate studio for her. Now that we don't have the chocolate shop, so so she has her own chocolate studio that she can play around with. But we still have ties to California. We do travel a lot to California to visit our friends and grandkids.
Mhm.
Most of them are in Southern California. So, and if I'm real lucky, my son will let me use his sailboat and go take me sailing. So I used to do a lot of sailing in California.
Very nice. Yeah.
Okay. One more question. If you could go back to, 25 years when we first met, what advice would you give me to stay in this business or not? What would be your come to Jesus meeting, if you will, with me on whether or not I should pursue a career in metrology?
Metrology, like I said, it's really not real publicly recognized as a career path. And I think that's one of the problems. But the people who have been in metrology and have made a career out of it, I think we can look back and it was a professional career for us, and we offered a lot to the industry and product safety, people safety, and keeping the wheels of industry going in the right direction. So we should all those of us who have been in the metrology industry a long time, we should be very, very proud of as far as what we contributed. And it's an industry that it's in the background. People don't recognize it. I can share a story with you. I was at a aircraft conference last year, and I sat down at the lunch table, and there was a group of students who are studying to be, aircraft maintenance mechanics. And so I introduced myself and asked them, what they have learned. And I said, well, have you ever heard of metrology? Oh, never heard, metrology. And so a few minutes later, two of their instructors sat down, and so I was just talking to your students about metrology. Ever heard of metrology? No, never heard of metrology.
Incredible.
So yeah, I said, well, do you use torque wrenches? Oh yeah, we use torque wrenches. So it's really eye-opening when you start those types of conversations at how people don't even know what metrology is. They've never heard of it, and people that are crap that they should. So it's a profession that it's just not very well recognized, but it's all around us. And people don't understand or realize it's everywhere. Nothing
Unsung
can be
heroes,
produced.
right? Unsung
Exactly.
heroes.
Nothing is produced in the world without metrology, without some type of measurement. And it goes back century. Yeah. It's been around for centuries. It's nothing new. As far as what you would do differently, man, I don't know. I'm glad you stuck with it. Let me put it that way. I'm glad you stuck with it. Yeah, we need NAPT, we need proficiency testing, and I can see that being intertwined with furthering education as far as how do you ensure that the student learn what they're supposed to learn?
Right.
Learn it and can apply it properly.
Right.
No, I actually have something I want to share with you and the audience. So tomorrow is Valentine's Day, which is the wedding anniversary for my wife and I, 39 years.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. And she told me that she has a gift for me that I've always wanted. It's somewhere in the house. It's hiding in plain sight. And I've been looking all over for this, right? During the podcast, I just recognized what she did. This plaque right here is an Air Force plaque, just to commemorate my time in the Air Force. This picture was not in there. I couldn't find one, and I hadn't dug through all of our photos to find one. She's put a picture in there. Now, this picture was taken on February 12th, yesterday, 43 years ago. This was at my sister's wedding. So I just finished basic training. I'd gotten to Lowry Air Force Base for, my PMEL training. And I came back home for my sister's wedding. And here I am in my uniform, very young person. And she finally found it and put a picture in there for me. So that was really
That's
sweet.
awesome.
Yeah. So,
That's
but that
awesome.
was my introduction time to metrology, right? Been in it for 43 years.
43 years.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing how time has just flown by. Just it's amazing.
That is. Well,
And-
Ken, I commend you on this effort with the Metrology Institute. I think it's what we need in the industry. I think it's what the future of metrology needs. And we are absolutely thrilled to support you in it.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So any last words, Ken, that you have?
Other than if you're interested in partnering with Metrology Institute, just go to metrologyinstitute.org under partners and sign up, and we'll be in contact.
Fantastic.
Wonderful. Yeah, absolutely. Go to the website, metrologyinstitute.org. I'd be amiss if I didn't thank our sponsor, the National Association for Proficiency Testing. As I always like to say, if you want to prove or need to prove your competency, your technical competency, then you need to enroll in proficiency test, because there is no other way to prove your technical competency without participating in a proper proficiency test. So with that being said, I want to thank you for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed it, like us, tell your friends, and look forward to the other ones that we have that's available on the website as well. We've got plenty of episodes now, so go and listen to all of our guests. Ken, I want to thank you, and we look forward to seeing you at the next trade show. Thanks, Ken. Howard.
Thank you. You guys have an awesome day.
You too.